2. Fear of failure. The critic solves your fear of failure by telling you that you can't do it. As a result, you don't try and your fear recedes. The healthier strategy for controlling the fear of failure is to redefine the meaning of your mistakes. People with low self-esteem consider mistakes to be an indication of a general lack of worth. Each error reaffirms their underlying belief that something is terribly wrong with them. In Chapter 8 on Handling Mistakes, you will explore one of the fundamental laws of human nature, that you always choose actions that seem most likely to meet your needs based on current awareness. You make the best decision you can at any point in time, given what you know and what you want. The secret to coping. 40. Disarming the critic. With any failure is to recognize that each decision you've made was the very best one available under the circumstances. 3. Fear of rejection. The critic helps you cope with rejection by predicting and thus desensitizing you to hurts. He also helps you cope by making you act in such a way that others are discouraged from any criticism. A healthier strategy for dealing with the fear of rejection is to 1. Reframe social errors as the best available decision at the time, Chapter 8 on Handling Mistakes. 2. Develop specific skills for coping with criticism, Chapter 9 on Responding to critique. CISM. And 3. Learn to check out an assumed rejection rather than Mindred. See the section on mind reading in Chapter 5. The first step requires that you talk differently to yourself. Social blunders are not an indication of your worth, they are merely decisions that you made that hindsight would lead you to make differently. The second step changes your behavior. You learn how to respond assertively to criticism rather than collapse into an orgy of self-blame. The third step requires a decision not to trust your assumptions about the thoughts and feelings of others. Instead, you develop the skill of checking out, asking specific questions that are designed to clarify suspected negative feelings in others. 4. Anger. The critic helps you deal with your fear of anger by deflecting it into an attack on yourself. A healthier strategy for dealing with your anger is to learn to say what you want and negotiate for change. Anger is so often a byproduct of helplessness because your needs are unexpressed or expressed ineffectually. You have a right to ask for what you want, even though you may not get it. Chapter 10 on Asking for what you want will help you to express your needs more effectively. Learning to be assertive will reduce feelings of anger both toward others and yourself. 5. Guilt. The critic helps control your guilt by punishing you. A better strategy is to determine if your guilt comes from the violation of a healthy or unhealthy value. Chapter 7 on Shoulds will give you a framework for exploring your personal value system. You will determine whether the rule you broke and feel guilt over is sufficiently flexible to fit you as a person and apply to your unique situation. You will also find out if the violated rule is realistic, meaning that it is based on the likely consequences and outcomes of your behavior as opposed to absolute dichotomies of right and wrong. If you find that your rule is an unhealthy one, you can fight your guilt by beginning to question your old value. This is easier said than done, but Chapter 7 will give you a step-by-step method for coping with unhealthy values. If, after examination, the rule you 41. Self-esteem violated feels healthy and right to you, the only way to stop the critic is to initiate the process of positive atonement. 6. Frustration. The critic helps you control frustration by blaming and beating you up until you've discharged enough negative energy to reduce your tension level. The healthier strategy is to relax and calm yourself by using the hypnotic induction in Chapter 12. Some of the key ingredients of the induction are affirmations of your intrinsic worth and a reminder that any mistakes you've made were the best decisions available to you at the time. The main purpose of the induction is to help you toward a sense of personal forgiveness and compassion for your own struggle. Summary chart. The following chart is a guide for using the rest of this book. On the left side of the chart are the list of needs that your critic helps you meet. Along the top of the chart are chapter titles that offer specific alternatives for meeting these same needs in healthy ways. The X's indicate which chapters offer help appropriate for a particular need. 42. Disarming the critic. UONENSNIJ. M. O. 18UY. UONDIEI. JO. 1. 2INTEJ. Four. Accurate. Self-assessment. A singles group had developed the custom of having the women choose the men for their first dance of the evening. The following exchange was overheard when an attractive woman approached a slender, well-groomed man at his table. Woman. Man. Woman. Man. Woman. Man. Woman. Man. Woman. Man. Woman. How about a dance? Looking around, me. There's nobody else at your table. I guess so. Miffed, you don't seem too enthusiastic. I didn't think you'd choose me. Sitting down, why not, you look nice to me. Nice. Sarcastic, this suit is 15 years old and doesn't fit, I've got Pinocchio's nose, I'm losing my hair, and I dance like I'm slipping on gravel. Silence. You want to dance. Getting up, let me think about that. The man in the dialogue was among the most attractive people at the singles group that night. But his self-concept was distorted by an overemphasis on the negative. He was filtering out all awareness of his positive qualities while focusing exclusively on his perceived flaws. Self-esteem. People with low self-esteem do not see themselves clearly. Like a reflection in a warped funhouse mirror, the image they see magnifies their weaknesses and minimizes their assets. The usual result of seeing such a distorted reflection is a strong feeling of inadequacy, since you seem to compare so poorly with those around you. You see other people far more accurately than you see yourself, because you are aware of their balance of strengths and weaknesses. Compared to all these normal people, your distorted funhouse image of yourself seems terribly flawed. To raise your self-esteem, it is absolutely necessary to throw away the old warped mirrors and learn to accurately perceive your particular balance of strengths and weaknesses. This chapter will help you create a clear and accurate self-description. Instead of filtering out your strengths and magnifying your weaknesses, you can learn to recognize and value the person you really are. The first step toward accurate self-assessment is to write down in as much detail as possible how you see yourself at the present time. The following self-concept inventory will help you organize your self-description. Self-concept inventory. Write down as many words or phrases as you can to describe yourself in the following areas. 1. Physical appearance. Include descriptions of your height, weight, facial appearance, quality of skin, hair, style of dress, as well as descriptions of specific body areas such as your neck, chest, waist, and legs. 2. How you relate to others. Include descriptions of your strengths and weaknesses in intimate relationships and in relationships to friends, family, and coworkers, as well as how you relate to strangers in social settings. 3. Personality. Describe your positive and negative personality traits. 4. How other people see you. Describe the strengths and weaknesses that your friends and family see. 5. Performance at school or on the job. Include descriptions of the way you handle the major tasks at work or school. 6. Performance of the daily tasks of life. Descriptions could be included in such areas as hygiene, health, maintenance of your living environment, food preparation, caring for your 46. Accurate self-assessment. Children, and any other ways you take care of personal or family needs. 7. Mental functioning. Include here an assessment of how well you reason and solve problems, your capacity for learning and creativity, your general fund of knowledge, your areas of special knowledge, wisdom you have acquired, insight, and so on. 8. Sexuality. How you see and feel about yourself as a sexual person. When you are finished with the inventory, go back and put a plus by items that represent strengths or things you like about yourself. Put a minus by items that you consider weaknesses or would like to change about yourself. Don't mark items that are neutral, factual observations about yourself. Eleanor, a sales representative for a pharmaceutical company, completed her self-concept inventory as follows. 1. Physical appearance plus large brown eyes, flat-chested plus dark curly hair, ugly nose plus olive complexion plus look good in 30s style plus clear, young-looking skin dresses. Buck teeth plus don't need makeup, fat belly plus light jeans and t-shirts, casual. Tilde fat thighs dress. Plus well-shaped hips, long neck. 5 feet 5 inches, 130 pounds. 2. How I relate to others. Plus warm plus good listener plus open, can, ask for what I want plus accepting and flexible, uncomfortable with strangers, can't set limits or say no plus protective. 2. Accepting, then resentful plus good at compromising plus good communicator, use guilt to get kids to do plus entertaining things. Phony with friends, sometimes attack and nag at plus socially competent kids. 47. Self-esteem. 3. Personality. Plus responsible, sulky when I don't get my plus funny way. Plus open, outgoing, sometimes irritable plus friendly plus affectionate with family, hate being alone, try too hard to please blabbermouth plus love to be busy. 4. How others see me. Wishy-washy plus strong, overextended plus independent, forgetful plus warm, lose everything, scattered plus positive, irritable plus competent, know nothing plus funny. 5. Performance on the job. Plus prompt, avoid making sales calls. Plus hardworking, motivated plus knowledgeable in field. Plus likable plus good at selling plus put people at ease, screw up paperwork, overstressed, restless. Lousy on the phone. 6. Performance of daily tasks of life. Forget appointments plus conscientious with babies, put things off safety, cleanliness plus good hygiene, shop stupidly plus quick, competent cook plus don't fret about my lousy housekeeper appearance. Plus conscientious about teeth. 48. Accurate self-assessment. 7. Mental functioning. Lousy at arguing, debating plus like to learn new things, stupid about current events plus curious about how things, mentally lazy work. Plus intuitive plus quick mind, illogical, uncreative. 8. Sexuality. Plus usually turned on, interested plus communicate sexual prefer. Plus accepting of partner's sexual ends as well. Turn-ons plus can express feelings sexually, inhibited, can feel very rejected and afraid to initiate depressed. Passive. It took Eleanor about an hour of concentrated effort to make this list. Right away she learned something very important about herself. She saw that she had almost as many minus as plus items in each category of the inventory. While she was able to recognize her strengths, it was also clear that Eleanor had many negative judgments about who she was in every area of her life. Not everyone has the same response pattern as Eleanor. You may find that the vast majority of your minus items show up in just one or two areas of the inventory. If that's the case, your self-esteem is generally good but has a few specific weak spots. The more your minus items are spread throughout the inventory, and the larger the proportion of minus to plus items, the more effort it will take to achieve a realistically positive self-concept. Listing your weaknesses. Divide a fresh sheet of paper into 2 columns. On the left, write down each item that was marked with a minus. Leave 3 lines between each item so that you'll have sufficient room to rewrite and make changes. There's nothing wrong with having faults. Everybody has them. There isn't a person on earth who doesn't have a list of ways that he or she would like to be different. The problem is not in having such a list, but the ways in which you use your weaknesses for destructive. 49. Self-esteem. Self-attacks. Saying that you hide your anger with your friends is a reasonable assessment. But to condemn yourself as phony with friends, as Eleanor did, undermines your self-esteem. Being aware that you have a 32-inch waist and would like to lose 3 inches is a realistic evaluation of something you want to change. But to say that you have a fat belly is like sticking pins in your sense of worth. There are 4 rules you need to follow when you begin revising the items on your list of weaknesses. 1. Use non-pejorative language. The item, buck teeth, should be changed to prominent front teeth. Lousy on the phone should be changed to I'm uncomfortable when I can't see people to pick up cues, I feel somewhat nervous on the phone. Shop stupidly should be rewritten as too many trips to the grocery store because I buy just what I need for dinner that night. Go through your list and eliminate all words that have negative connotations: stupid, blabbermouth, wishy-washy, lousy, fat, ugly, and so on. These words must be banished from your self-descriptive vocabulary. Like piranhas, these negative labels aren't very dangerous when they occur occasionally in isolation. But in large schools they can literally devour your self-esteem. 2. Use accurate language. Don't exaggerate and don't embellish the negative. Revise the items on your weaknesses list so that they are purely descriptive. Confine yourself to the facts. The term, fat thighs, is both pejorative and inaccurate. For Eleanor, the accurate statement was 21-inch thighs. Screw-up paperwork is another inaccurate statement. Eleanor rewrote it as, occasionally forget to fill in items on my order forms. She rewrote, wishy-washy, as, tend to defer to others who have strong opinions. As for being illogical, she realized that this was her husband's idea and that she didn't really think of herself as illogical. 3. Use language that is specific rather than general. Eliminate words like everything, always, never, completely, and so on. Rewrite the list so that your description is limited to the particular situation, setting, or relationship where the trait occurs. General indictments, such as, can't set limits or say no, should be revised to reflect only the specific relationships where the problem occurs. When Eleanor thought about that item, she realized that it was simply untrue as written. She could say no to salespeople, no to her children, no to her mother and no to neighbors who made impossible demands. But she had trouble setting limits with her husband and certain close friends. Eleanor rewrote the item as, difficulty saying no to husband and close friends when they need or ask for help. Eleanor also rewrote the item, use guilt to get kids to do things. She realized there were 50. Accurate self-assessment. Only 2 main situations where the problem occurred. I make the kids feel wrong for hurting each other or not visiting their grandparents. The item, hate being alone, was changed to, nervous and restless being alone in the house after 8 or 9 o'clock. Lose everything, got changed to, occasionally lose keys or sweater. Notice how being specific makes a weakness seem less global and wrong. Your problem is no longer all-encompassing. You recognize that it occurs only on certain occasions, with some people. 4. Find exceptions or corresponding strengths. This is an essential step for those items that really make you feel bad about yourself. For example, Eleanor was aware that she had trouble asking for what she wanted. Her pathological critic frequently used this as ammunition for an attack on her self-worth. Eleanor rewrote the item by first noting exceptions. I'm reasonably assertive with coworkers, with my friends Barbara and Julie, and the kids. But not my husband or other close friends. Another item that made Eleanor feel particularly vulnerable was the label, mentally lazy. She rewrote the item by acknowledging areas of thought where she had no interest and then adding one important exception, bored by political and philosophical issues, abstract thought. Do like to think about motivations and drives behind human behavior. Eleanor's item, lousy at arguing, debating, was another area of special sensitivity. The critic used it to kick her for not standing up for herself or defending her position. Eleanor rewrote the item by including a corresponding strength. Don't have enough facts or a killer instinct. What I like, though, is that I don't have to be right all the time. I don't get miffed when people disagree with me. Eleanor's revised weaknesses list. Original version, revised version. 1. Physical appearance: buck teeth, prominent front teeth, fat belly, 32-inch waist, fat thighs, 21-inch thighs, flat-chested, 34B bra. Ugly nose, proportionately too large nose. 2. How I relate to others. Can't set limits or say no, difficulty saying no to husband or close friends when they need or ask for help. 51. Self-esteem. Original version. Too accepting, then resentful. Phony with friends. Can't ask for what I want. Uncomfortable with strangers. Use guilt to get kids to do things. Sometimes attack and nag the kids. Revised version. I let my husband do what he needs to do, but if I don't get enough attention I may feel resentful. Reluctant to express anger. With friends. I'm reasonably assertive with coworkers, my friends Barbara and Julie, and the kids, but not with my husband or other close friends. Uncomfortable with strange men in social settings. Make the kids feel wrong for hurting each other or not visiting grandparents. 90% of the time I'm supportive, but several times a week I nag and hassle the kids about homework and kitchen cleanup. 3. Personality. Hate being alone. Blabbermouth. Sulky when I don't get my way. Irritable sometimes. Try too hard to please. Nervous and restless being alone in the house after 8 or 9 o'clock. On 2 occasions in the past year I told something I shouldn't have. I sulk when my husband works late, otherwise I make a real effort to be cheerful. Irritable with the kids about homework and chores a couple of times a week. Overextend myself with husband and close friends. 4. How others see me. Wishy-washy, tend to defer to others who have strong opinions. 52. Accurate self-assessment. Overextended, I work, I have 3 kids, husband and friends. There's not enough time. Forgetful, forget birthdays, doctor appointments on occasion, and certain people's names. Lose everything, occasionally lose keys or a sweater. Know nothing, know little about current events or history, don't read the newspaper. Know a lot about psychology, pharmaceuticals, children, modern dance, making a family work. Scattered, see, forgetful, and lose everything. 5. Performance on the job. Overstressed, usually very tired when I get home, okay on weekends. Lousy on phone, uncomfortable when I can't see people to pick up cues, feel somewhat nervous on phone. Screw up paperwork, occasionally forget to fill in items on my order forms. Avoid making sales calls, aggressive at making sales calls. A few really unpleasant calls I put off for up to a week. Only 1 doctor have I avoided completely. Restless, being restless is not a problem, doesn't bother me. 6. Performance of daily tasks of life. Put things off, put off visiting my mother, cleaning up, and getting the kids to do chores, mostly pretty responsible with family and work obligations. Shop stupidly, too many trips to the grocery store because I buy just what I need for dinner that night. 53. Self-esteem. Original version, revised version. Lousy housekeeper, dishes sometimes pile up, dining room table and living room a mess. Do major cleanup once a week. 7. Mental functioning. Lousy at arguing, debating, don't have enough facts and a killer instinct. What I like, though, is that I don't have to be right all the time. I don't get miffed when people disagree with me. Stupid about current events, see, know nothing. Mentally lazy, bored by political, philosophical issues, abstract thought. Do like to think about motivations and drives behind human behavior. Illogical is my husband's idea. I don't really believe it. Uncreative, not interested in the arts or in making things. Have done very well at decorating houses, enjoy my modern dance classes. 8. Sexuality. Inhibited, uncomfortable when undressing in front of my husband or having him look at my body too closely, but I enjoy trying new things sexually. Can feel very rejected and feel rejected and depressed if depressed. My husband seems cold and cut off for several days and doesn't seem to want physical contact. Afraid to initiate, I'm anxious when I initiate. Because if he isn't interested I get hurt. But I do initiate at least a quarter of the time. 54. Accurate self-assessment. Passive, I let him set the mood sexually. But that's not really a problem. Now it's time to revise each weakness on the left side of your list. Do it carefully, taking as much time as necessary. This is an extremely challenging task. You will be taking a major step toward changing the negative self-evaluations that make you feel wrong and not okay. Remember that each revised item should 1. Eliminate all pejorative language, 2. Be accurate and purely factual, 3. Eliminate general indictments in favor of specific situations where the weakness occurs, and 4. Include as many exceptions and corresponding strengths as you can think of. Listing your strengths. The next step in accurate self-assessment is to acknowledge your strengths. But this is no easy task. The American culture has a degree of ambivalence about boasting. Heroes let their actions speak for them. braggarts or shunned. In addition to these cultural prohibitions, you may have had experiences in your own family that make you reluctant to acknowledge your positive side. Critical parents often punish children for speaking well of themselves. While growing up, some children experience hundreds of interactions like these. Jimmy, 1 did good on the spelling test. Mother, yes, but you got AD last week and the teacher says you aren't doing all your homework. Susan, I climbed the tree in the backyard, Daddy. Father, don't do that, it's dangerous. Mike, I showed my shell collection in school today. Father, Tilda, and then did you bring it home or did you lose it? As a result of cultural and parental conditioning, you may find it anxiety-provoking to give yourself credit for your assets. It feels dangerous, almost as if somebody might hurt you or strike you down for your audacity. This is the time to be audacious, to toot your own horn, too. Search for and acknowledge things to appreciate about you. Go back to your self-concept inventory. On a fresh sheet of paper, write down all the items marked with a plus. Now look at the items on your revised weaknesses list for which you wrote corresponding strengths. 55. Self-esteem. If any of these corresponding strengths are not on your list of assets, add them now. Read slowly down the items on your list of strengths. Try to think of other special qualities or abilities that you haven't mentioned. Think of compliments you've been given, remember little successes, remember what you've overcome and what you've cared about. Include any prizes, awards, or good marks you've earned. The following exercise may help you to remember some of the things that you value about yourself. Exercise. For a few moments think about the people you have most loved or admired. What qualities move you to feel affection or admiration? What makes you really like someone? Right now, before reading further, jot down on a piece of paper those qualities that you have most appreciated in these individuals. At this point your list should be complete. You can now use it as a tool for introspection. Go down the list slowly, item by item, and ask yourself which of these qualities apply to you. Look for examples from your past or present. You may be surprised to find that a number of the same qualities that inspire you to care for and respect others are descriptive of you as well. If any of the special qualities that you value in others and recognize in yourself have not been included in your list of strengths, add them now. Go over your list of strengths one more time. Rewrite them in complete sentences, using synonyms, adjectives, and adverbs to elaborate. Get rid of negatives in favor of positives, and eschew left-handed compliments. When Eleanor revised her strengths list, she changed, don't need makeup, to, I have excellent natural coloring. She changed, funny, to, I have a quick, perceptive sense of humor that people really appreciate. She elaborated, independent, by writing, when it really counts, I can depend on myself and not have to ask others for help. I have a strong core of strength and resolve that will see me through. You've been spending years dwelling on and polishing your list of negative qualities. Now give equal time to your strengths. Dwell on them. Pretend that you are writing a letter of recommendation for someone you really love and really want to succeed. When Eleanor got to items like to learn new things, and curious about how things work, she really went to town. This is an area where you will have to go a little overboard to counteract your usual tendency to downplay your strengths. 56. Accurate self-assessment. A new self-description. It's time now to meld your strengths and weaknesses into a self-description that is accurate, fair, and supportive. It must be a description that won't run away from the truth. It will acknowledge weaknesses that you might like to change. But it will also include the personal assets that are undeniably part of your identity. Your new description should cover all 8 areas of the self-concept inventory, including the more significant strengths and weaknesses from the revised version only. The self-description that Eleanor wrote follows. I'm 5'5", 130 pounds, with large brown eyes, a proportionately too large nose, full lips, prominent front teeth, dark curly hair, and a clear, young-looking complexion. I have excellent natural coloring. I have a 32-inch waist, 21-inch thighs, and well-shaped hips. I am a warm, friendly, open person, who communicates well. I am reasonably assertive at work and with the kids. I have difficulty asking for what I want and setting limits with my husband and certain friends. I make friends easily, although I'm reluctant to express anger with them. I have a good relationship with my children. At times I nag and hassle the kids about their chores and homework. I am a good listener and am intuitive about people, especially when I can relate face to face. I'm an extremely responsible person. I have a quick, perceptive sense of humor that people really appreciate. I make a real effort to be cheerful. I enjoy it when the whole family is home together in the evenings, and it's hard on me to be alone after 8 or 9 at night. I really enjoy people, but sometimes I try too hard or tell too much when I'm really involved in a conversation. Others see me as a positive, competent, strong person, but I tend to defer to others who have strong opinions. I know little about current events and politics, yet I feel knowledgeable about the things that really interest me, psychology, children, my job, modern dance, and making a family work. When it really counts, I can depend upon myself and not have to ask others for help. I have a strong core of strength and resolve that will see me through. On the job I'm hardworking and conscientious and get along well with others. I hate the paperwork involved in my job and occasionally I miss a few of the details. I'm uncomfortable when I'm on the phone and tend to delay calls to irritable doctors. I'm 57. Self-esteem. A great salesperson when I can sit down with people face to face. I can really sell the product along with myself. I am fast, casual, and efficient when it comes to cooking, house work, and grooming. I tend to put off things like visiting my mother and house cleaning. Fortunately, I have a high tolerance for the kids, clutter. I do a whirlwind cleanup campaign on Sundays. I'm fairly intelligent and like to learn new things. My curiosity is insatiable. I like to discover how things work, a new drug we are selling, or the inside of a toaster. This will keep me growing and changing. I avoid political and philosophical arguments and am bored with abstract theory. I love talking about human nature and what makes people tick. I'm not good at arts and crafts, but I enjoy decorating the house. I feel sexually alive and open to sexual experimentation, although I feel inhibited about undressing or walking around naked, even in front of my husband. I'm intuitive and able to communicate fairly easily about sex. Indoctrinating yourself. Your new self-description could be worth your weight in platinum. You should read it to yourself out loud, slowly and carefully, twice a day for 4 weeks. This is the minimum length of time for you to begin changing the ways you spontaneously think about yourself. Just as you learn a song by getting the tune in your ear, you can learn a more forgiving, more accurate way of thinking about yourself by reading your new self-description every day. Celebrate your strengths. You've listed the qualities in yourself that you appreciate, but that doesn't mean much unless you can remember them. When the critic is beating on you for being stupid or selfish or frightened of life, you've got to remember your strengths so that you can answer him back. You've got to be able to say, wait a minute, I'm not listening to that. I know I'm creative, I'm generous to my kids, and I tried a new career at 40. Remembering your strengths, particularly at the times when you feel most down on yourself, requires you to develop a system of daily reminders. The following 3 methods will help you stay aware of your positive qualities. 58. Accurate self-assessment. 1. Daily affirmations. One way to remind yourself of your strengths is to combine several of them into an affirmation. This is merely a one-sentence positive statement that you repeat to yourself at intervals throughout the day. Here are some affirmations that Eleanor developed. E. I'm a warm, open, accepting person. E. I'm funny and likable and have good friends. E. I'm competent and hardworking and really good at what I do. Write a new affirmation each morning. Make it something you can believe about yourself, something comforting and supportive. Keep your affirmation in mind throughout the day, as though it were a sort of meditation. Use it when you feel under stress or self-critical. Use it like a touchstone, a reassuring knowledge that you are a good and worthy person. 2. Reminder signs. Another method of emphasizing your strengths, and one which can be used together with affirmations, is the reminder sign. Write a brief affirmation in large letters on a piece of typing paper or a 6x9 file card. Place a sign like this on your mirror. Tape others on the back of your front door, by your nightstand, on your closet or refrigerator door, near a light switch. The idea is to have reminder signs in places where your eye will naturally fall. You can also make smaller signs on 3x5 or business cards. Keep these in your briefcase, under the cellophane on your cigarettes, in your desk drawer at work, in your wallet or money clip. Change or rotate your signs every few days. While some people will dismiss reminder signs as absurd or silly, many who use them report that they reinforce and strengthen their sense of personal adequacy. The signs are a way of forcing you to notice what qualities in yourself you value. 3. Active integration. A third way to increase awareness of your strengths is to recall specific examples and times when you clearly demonstrated them. Each day, select 3 strengths from your list. Then look into your past for situations that exemplify those particular qualities. This exercise is called active integration because it transforms your list of strengths from a lot of words into specific memories. It helps you to believe and remember that these positive qualities really apply to you. You can go through your list, finding examples, as many times as you want. But try to make it through the entire list at least once. In her process of active integration, Eleanor thought of examples like these. 59. Self-esteem. E. Likeable. The time Jean said I had a sparkling personality. And then Ellen spoke up and said I made it fun in the office. E. Competent. I'm third best representative in my area, which is damn good, considering I've only been doing this for 4 years. E. Independent. Like when my husband was sent to Saudi Arabia for 3 months. I took care of the family without him. A commitment to accuracy. Accurate self-assessment involves 2 things. 1. Acknowledging and remembering your strengths, and 2. Describing your weaknesses accurately, specifically, and non-pejoratively. This second aspect requires a major commitment on your part. When the critic is kicking you, when he's exaggerating and using those negative generalizations, you've got to stop him. The truth will stop him. Accuracy, specificity, non-judgment. Stay vigilant. Those old, negative ways of talking to yourself are well entrenched habits. You will need to answer them, over and over again, with the new and accurate language you have learned. 60. S. Cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are the tools of the pathological critic, the means by which the critic operates, the weapons that the critic brings to bear against your self-esteem. If irrational beliefs can be said to be the pathological critic's ideology, a thesis explored in a later chapter, then cognitive distortions can be considered the critic's methodology. The critic uses distortions the way a terrorist uses bombs and guns. Cognitive distortions are actually bad habits, habits of thought that you consistently use to interpret reality in an unreal way. For example, when a colleague declines to be on a committee you are chairing, you can take his refusal as the simple decision it is. Or you can employ your habit of thinking about any type of rejection as a personal insult, and thus take another swipe at your beleaguered self-esteem. Distortions are a matter of style. They may be based on deeply held unrealistic beliefs, but the distortions are not beliefs themselves, they are habits of thinking that get you into trouble. Distorted thinking styles are hard to diagnose and treat because they are bound up tightly with your way of perceiving reality. Even the sanest, most rational person on Earth operates at some distance from reality. It's unavoidable, given the built-in programming of the human mind and senses. One way of thinking about this is to say that everyone looks at himself or herself through a telescope. If your telescope is right way round and in good repair, you see yourself looming relatively large and important in the universe, clearly focused, and with your various self-esteem parts in correct proportion. Unfortunately, few people have perfect telescopes. The telescope can be wrong way round, so that they see themselves small and diminished. The lenses can be smudged, lopsided, chipped, or out of focus. Obstructions in the tube can block your view of certain aspects of yourself. Some people have kaleidoscopes instead of telescopes. Others can't see at all, because they pasted pictures of a false self over the lens of their telescope. Distorted thinking styles cut you off from reality in several ways. Distortions are judgmental, they automatically apply labels to people and events before you get a chance to evaluate them. Distortions also tend to be inaccurate and imprecise. They are invariably general in scope and application, failing to take special circumstances and characteristics into account. They allow you to see only one side of a question, giving an unbalanced view of the world. And finally, distortions are based on emotional rather than rational processes. This chapter will discuss the 9 most common cognitive distortions that affect self-esteem. It will teach you how to recognize them and develop effective rebuttal techniques to pierce through the veil of distortion and deal with reality in a more balanced, accurate, self-compassionate way. The distortions. 1. Overgeneralization. Cognitive distortions change the very nature of the universe you live in. Overgeneralizations create a shrinking universe in which more and more absolute laws make life more and more confining. It is a universe in which the scientific method is turned upside down. Instead of observing all available data, formulating a law that explains all of the data, and then testing the law, you take one factor event, make a general rule out of it, and never test the rule. For example, a chief accountant named George asked a bookkeeper in his department to go to dinner with him. She declined, saying she never went out with the boss. George concluded that none of the women in his department would ever want to go out with him. From one rejection he overgeneralized and made it a rule never to ask again. If you overgeneralize, one faux pas means that you're a social incompetent. One unsuccessful date with an older woman means that all older women will find you shallow and inexperienced. One wobbly table means that you'll never master furniture making. 1. 62. Cognitive distortions. Accidentally deleted file means that you're a computer illiterate. And your habit of overgeneralizing doesn't let you test these rules. You can tell that you're overgeneralizing when your pathology CalCritic uses these keywords: never, always, all, every, none, no one, nobody, everyone, everybody. The critic uses absolutes to close the doors of possibility, blocking your access to change and growth. I always screw up. I never get to work on time. Nobody really cares for me. Everybody thinks I'm awkward. 2. Global labeling. Global labeling is the application of stereotyped labels to whole classes of people, things, behaviors, and experiences. People who practice global labeling live in a universe populated by stock characters who act out unrealistic melodramas. Global labelers with low self-esteem often cast themselves in the role of the villain or the simpleton. This thinking style is closely allied with overgeneralization, but the distortion takes the form of a label instead of a rule. Global labeling is even more deadly in the way it creates stereotypes and cuts you off from the true variety of life. For example, an aspiring writer was working in a warehouse and writing at night. He had a touch of asthma and a slight limp. He had labels for everything. The warehouse owner was a capitalistic slime. Editors who rejected his short stories were part of the literary establishment. His job was a treadmill. His writing was neurotic scribbling. He himself was a wheezing gimp. He thought he suffered from an inferiority complex. His favorite words were all pejorative ones. He had a million slogans, and they were all clichés of loss and dissatisfaction. With so many labels pasted on his life, he was too bound into the status quo to change any part of it. You should suspect yourself of global labeling if the messages from your critic are pejorative clichés about your appearance, performance, intelligence, relationships, and so on. My love affair is a hopeless tangle. I'm just a failure. My house is a pigsty. My degree is a worthless piece of paper. I'm neurotic. I'm stupid. I'm a spineless jellyfish, a quitter. All my efforts to improve are futile grasping at straws. 7. 3. Filtering. When you filter reality, you see your universe as through a glass darkly. You can see and hear only certain things. Like a 63. Self-esteem. Voice-activated tape recorder, your attention is awakened only by particular kinds of stimuli, examples of loss, rejection, unfairness, and so on. You selectively abstract certain facts from reality and pay attention to them, ignoring all the rest. You have blind spots that obscure evidence of your own worth. Filtering makes you a particularly bad reporter of your life experience. Your own accounts of your experience are as biased as political journalism in a banana republic. Filtering is as dangerous to your self-esteem as driving a car with all the windows painted black would be to your physical well-being. An example of filtering is Ray and Kay's intimate dinner at home. Kay praises Ray's choice of wine and the flowers he bought. She compliments him on grilling the steaks to perfection and for picking out the sweetest corn on the cob. Then she suggests that next time he might put a little less salt in the salad dressing. Ray suddenly feels let down and incompetent because Kay doesn't like his salad dressing. He can't console himself by recalling her several compliments because he literally didn't hear them. He was too busy filtering the conversation for its critical content. You should suspect filtering when your pathological critic returns again and again to certain themes or keywords: loss, gone, burnt, dangerous, unfair, stupid. Examine your memories of social events or conversations to see whether you remember all of what happened or was said. If out of a 3-hour dinner party you can only clearly recall the 15 minutes when you spilled your wine and felt mortified, then you were probably filtering your experiences for evidence of unworth. The negative things about yourself that you focus on become a leitmotifs in the symphony of your life. You listen for them so hard that you lose track of the larger, more important melodies and movements. It's like the piccolo player who never heard the canons in the 1812 ouverture. 4. Polarized thinking. If you habitually indulge in polarized thinking, you live in a black and white universe, with no colors or shades of gray. You divide all your actions and experiences into either, or dichotomies, according to absolute standards. You judge yourself as either a saint or a sinner, a good guy or a bad guy, a success or a failure, a hero or a villain, a noble or a bastard. For example, Anne was clerk in a fabric store. She sometimes drank a little too much at parties. One Monday she stayed home from work with a hangover. She was severely depressed about this. 64. Cognitive distortions. Incident for a week because she tended to judge people as either sober citizens or alcoholics. By falling off the wagon once, she became, in her own eyes, a bottomed-out drunk. The trouble with polarized thinking is that you inevitably end up on the negative side of the equation. No one can be perfect all the time, so at the first mistake, you must conclude that you are all bad. This, one strike and you're out, style of thinking is death to self-esteem. You can catch yourself doing polarized thinking by listening for, either or, messages from your pathological critic. I'm either going to win the scholarship or completely blow my future. If you can't be funny and on, then you're a bore. If I can't be calm, I'm hysterical. Sometimes only one half of the dichotomy is stated, and the other half is implied. There's only one right way to live and all the others are wrong. This is my big chance for a good relationship. And if I blow it, I'll be alone. 5. Self-blame. Self-blame is a distorted thinking style that has you blaming yourself for everything, whether you are actually at fault or not. In the self-blaming cosmos, you are at the center of a universe of bad things, and they're all your fault. You blame yourself for all your shortcomings, for being coarse, fat, lazy, scatterbrained, incompetent, or whatever. You blame your self for things that are only marginally under your control, such as your bad health or how others react to you. If self-blame is a firmly ingrained habit, you may even find yourself feeling responsible for things that are obviously out of your control, like the weather, plane schedules, or your spouse's feelings. It's good to take responsibility for your life, but in a case of serious self-blame, you see yourself as pathologically responsible. The most common, observable symptom of self-blame is incessant apologizing. Your hostess burns the roast, and you apologize. Your spouse doesn't want to see the movie you prefer, so you apologize. The clerk at the post office says you don't have enough postage. And you say, God, I'm so stupid, I'm sorry. Self-blame blinds you to your good qualities and accomplishments. One man had 3 sons who grew up to become a dedicated social worker, a talented chemist, and a drug addict. The father poisoned his later years by brooding over the ways he had failed his 3rd son. He discounted any influence he may have had over the lives of his other, more successful sons. 65. Self-esteem. 6. Personalization. In a personalized universe, you are the universe. Every atom in it is somehow related to you. All events, properly decoded, seem to have something to do with you. Unfortunately, there is very little sense of power or of being in control of events. It feels more like you are under pressure, under siege, or under observation by everyone around you. Personalization has a narcissistic component. You enter a crowded room and immediately begin comparing yourself to everybody else, who is smarter, better looking, more competent, more popular, and so on. Your roommate complains about how cramped the apartment is, and you immediately assume that she means that you have too much stuff. A friend says that he's bored and you think he means that he's bored with you. The big drawback to personalization is that it makes you react inappropriately. You might start a fight with your roommate over a non-existent issue. You may try to be less boring by cracking tasteless jokes, and thus become really boring. Inappropriate responses like these can alienate those around you. Their hostility or disapproval, imagined at first, can actually become real, fueling another round of distorted interactions. It's difficult to catch yourself indulging in personalization. One way is to pay close attention when someone is complaining to you. For example, if someone at work were complaining about people not returning tools and supplies to their proper place, what would your reaction be? Would you automatically assume that the person was complaining about you? Would you automatically assume that the person wanted you to do something about the problem? Then you might be personalizing. You might be automatically relating the complaint to yourself and never have it cross your mind that the person was just blowing off steam and that it had nothing to do with you personally. Another way to catch yourself is trying to notice when you are comparing yourself negatively to others, concluding that you are less smart, attractive, competent, and so on. 7. Mind reading. Mind reading is a distorted thinking style which assumes that everyone in the universe is just like you. This is an easy mistake to make, since it's based on the phenomenon of projection. You assume that others feel the way you do, basing your assumption on a belief in a commonality of human nature and experience that may or may not actually exist. 66. Cognitive distortions. Mind reading is fatal to self-esteem because you are especially liable to think that everyone agrees with your negative opinions of yourself. I'm boring her. She can tell I'm really a dull guy trying to fake it. He's quiet because I was late and he's angry about it. He is watching my every move for the slightest mistake. He wants to fire me. Mind reading leads to tragic miscalculations in your relationships. Harry was an electrician who often assumed that his wife, Marie, was angry with him when she bustled about the apartment with a frown on her face. He handled this supposed rejection by becoming very terse and withdrawn. In fact, Marie frowned when she was having menstrual cramps, when she was rushed, and when she felt worried about finances. But Harry's withdrawal made it hard for her to tell Harry why she was frowning. She interpreted his withdrawal as lack of interest, and kept quiet. Harry's initial mind reading destroyed the chance for any real communication. When you're mind reading, your perception seems right, so you proceed as if it were right. You don't check out your interpretations with others because there seems to be no doubt. You can tell your mind reading by listening closely to what you say when pressed. When asked why you made an assumption, I just had a strong hunch. I can just tell. I just know. It's my intuition. I'm sensitive to these things. These kinds of statements show that you are leaping to conclusions without any real evidence. 8. Control fallacies. Control fallacies either put you in charge of the whole universe or put everyone but you in charge. The distorted thinking style of overcontrol gives you a false feeling of omnipotence. You struggle to control every aspect of every situation. You hold yourself responsible for the behavior of every guest at your party, for your child's grades in school, for your paperboy's punctuality, for your mother's coping with menopause, and for the outcome of your United Way campaign. When guests put their feet on the furniture, when your child flunks algebra, when the news paper is late, when your mother calls you up in tears, or when your motion is voted down at the committee meeting, you feel a loss of control. You may experience resentment, anger, and a keen sense of personal failure that erodes your self-esteem. You should suspect your pathological critic of using the fallacy of overcontrol when you think things like, I've got to make them listen, she has to say yes, I'll make sure he arrives on time, in 67. Self-esteem. Situations where you are not really in control. You should suspect that overcontrol is the problem if you feel a keen sense of personal failure when someone close to you fails. The distorted thinking style of under control takes control away from you. You put yourself on the fringes of every situation, unable to influence others. You feel that the outcomes of events are out of your hands most of the time. Molly was a receptionist for the phone company who frequently fell into this fallacy. Her habit of thinking that she could do nothing about her life usurped her power and cast her in the role of perennial victim. She was in trouble with her boss for coming in late too often, her bank account was overdrawn, and her boyfriend had stopped calling her. When she thought about her situation, she felt helpless. It seemed that her boss, the bank, and her boyfriend were all ganging up on her. Her pathological critic kept saying things like, you're weak, you're helpless. There's nothing you can do. She was literally unable to make plans for getting up earlier, refinancing her debts, or calling up and confronting her boyfriend. Of the two control fallacies, under control is the worst for your self-esteem. Abdication of power has its cost in a feeling of helplessness, a bleak sense of hopelessness, feeble resentment, and numbing depression. 9. Emotional reasoning. An emotional universe is chaotic, governed by changeable feelings instead of rational laws. The distortion in this thinking style is to avoid or discount your thinking altogether. You rely instead on emotions to interpret reality and direction action. Susie was a fashion designer who lived on an emotional roller coaster. She'd feel happy one day, so she figured her life was going well. The next day she might be sad, and if you asked her, she'd tell you how her life was a tragedy. Next week she'd be a bit nervous and be convinced that her life was dangerous in some way. The actual facts of her existence didn't change much from day to day. Only her emotions changed. The implication for self-esteem is disastrous. You feel useless, so you must be useless. You feel unworthy, so you must be unworthy. You feel ugly, so you are ugly. You are what you feel. Here's how the pathological critic uses emotions as weapons. He whispers in your mental ear, weak, spineless. This faint thought triggers the emotion of depression. You feel helpless and stuck. Then the critic pipes up again with a devious piece of circular. 68. Cognitive distortions. Reasoning, you are what you feel. You feel helpless, so you are helpless. By this time, you've forgotten that the critic started the whole vicious circle. You fall for a circular argument that you would dismiss out of hand if you read it in a book. The real error in emotional reasoning lies in tuning out those first thoughts introduced by your pathological critic, the thoughts that cause your painful emotions in the first place. The way to correct the error is to tune back into your self-talk and notice how it distorts reality to trigger negative emotions. Combating distortions. The most important single skill to master is vigilance. You must constantly listen to what you're telling yourself. You must not give in to depression, but persevere in analyzing the thoughts that arouse your painful emotions. It helps to remember that low self-esteem involves some short-term gains. When you begin to thwart the pathological critic and refute the distorted thinking styles that are his weapons, you are cutting yourself off from these short-term gains. You're taking a chance. You're betting your current discomfort against future gain. This risk will feel scary at times, boring at others. The process will seem hopeless, or just like too much trouble. You will come up with a series of rationalizations for why it won't work, why it isn't working, and how silly the whole thing is anyway. These are the death struggles of the pathological critic. Combating distorted thinking involves a commitment. You must commit yourself to being constantly on guard, even when you don't feel like it. This commitment is more important than your commitment to your family, your friends, or your ideals, because it is a commitment to yourself. The 3-column technique. This technique for rebutting cognitive distortions is as simple as the commitment to use the technique is difficult. At first, write all your responses down on paper. Later, when this technique becomes a habit, you may be able to do it in your head. When you're in a situation that makes you feel depressed or discouraged, when your opinion of yourself is low, take time out to get a pencil and a piece of paper. Make 3 columns like this: self-statement, distortion, rebuttal. 69. Self-esteem. In the first column, write down what your pathological critic is saying to you about the situation. Even if nothing immediately comes to mind, keep reliving the situation until you get a word or two. Your self-statements may be extremely fast or condensed, so that you will have to slow them down and write them out in full. Then examine your self-statements for the distortions that murder your self-esteem. Here is a summary of the 9 most common distortions for your quick reference. 1. Overgeneralization. From one isolated event you make a general, universal rule. If you failed once, you'll always fail. Global labeling. You automatically use pejorative labels to describe yourself, rather than accurately describing your qualities. Filtering. You selectively pay attention to the negative and disregard the positive. Polarized thinking. You lump things into absolute, black and white categories, with no middle ground. You have to be perfect or you're worthless. Self-blame. You consistently blame yourself for things that may not really be your fault. Personalization. You assume that everything has something to do with you, and you negatively compare yourself to everyone else. Mind reading. You assume that others don't like you, are angry with you, don't care about you, and so on, without any real evidence that your assumptions are correct. Control fallacies. You either feel that you have total responsibility for everybody and everything, or feel that you have no control, that you're a helpless victim. Emotional reasoning. You assume that things are the way you feel about them. In the last column, write rebuttals to your self-statements, specifically attacking each distortion in turn. Example: Joan had trouble joining in at work. Others would gather in the employees' lounge for coffee and go out to lunch together. Joan stayed at her desk or took walks alone at lunch time. She liked and admired many of her coworkers, but felt awkward about joining them. One day at lunch she stayed at her desk and tried the 3-column technique. This is what she wrote. 70. Self-statements. They'll reject me. Cognitive distortions. Distortions. Mind reading. Rebuttal. I have no way of. They'll see how nervous and awkward I am. They already think I'm weird. TOB tongue-tied. Nothing to say. I'm always like that. Knowing what they'll think. That's up to them. Not so. Sometimes I'm quite articulate. Overgeneralization. No, I'm not a dud. I'm just quiet. I'm such a dud. Global labeling. They'll all be looking at me, at my weird clothes that don't fit, my dishrag hair. Mind reading. They couldn't care how I look. That's all in my head. It's hopeless. There's nothing I can do about it. Control fallacy. Nothing is ever totally hopeless. Enough defeatism. Creating your rebuttal voice. After making a commitment, the next hardest task facing you is to develop effective rebuttals to your self-statements.